The frozen wolves pleaded with the man to let them into his house. But what happened next astonished everyone. The night was so dark that the snow appeared as the only source of light. Ethan Turner woke with a shuddering sensation that someone was watching him from behind. There were no footsteps, no sounds, only a heavy silence as dense as hardened resin. Slowly, he sat up in bed and listened to the subtle noises of the forest outside his window. There was no wind, no creaking branches. The frosted forest lay still, as if holding its breath before a storm or something that should not be. Then suddenly he heard a soft, almost cautious scratching, as though someone were trying not to startle him. Ethan froze. A deep, distant alarm gripped his chest, yet he remained seated, straining his ears. The scratching grew a little louder. He slowly stood up, his bare feet touching the icy wooden floor, and his gaze drifted toward the window. Beyond it lay only darkness and snow shimmering in the moonlight. But he felt that something lurked out there, hidden just beyond the limits of human perception. Abruptly, his fingers found a flashlight on the table, and Ethan decisively pressed its button. A narrow beam of light pierced the glass, revealing what stood on his doorstep. On the frozen ground stood two wolves, massive frost-covered creatures whose breath formed white clouds from their muzzles. They did not move, only stared. Their eyes were not wild or hungry, but fixed with an intense, scrutinizing look that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. He gripped the flashlight tighter. He had seen wolves before in his years as a rescue worker. He knew their nature. If they came to a man's home, something was amiss. But these wolves had not appeared by chance. They were waiting. Ethan took a tentative step toward the door, while the wolves remained motionless. Only one of them stirred slightly, and then Ethan noticed dark, thick blood on its paw, frozen already. The wound looked fresh. He realized that such injuries were rarely accidental and often served as a forewarning of danger. As Ethan continued to ponder the situation, he noticed unusual tracks in the snow next to the wolves. Tracks that were not typical wolf prints, but resembled human footprints, or perhaps a bizarre hybrid. These tracks led deep into the forest, yet part of them seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, as if someone had just been there and then vanished. A cold shudder ran down his spine. The wolves still waited. Ethan took a deep breath and reached out his hand, trying to decide whether to open the door or leave them out in the dark. But what if they weren't the only ones who had come to his house on this night? On a channel where original stories are shared, with all names and places altered, our tale now begins. At the edge of his new home, located in a small town in northern America, Ethan stood on his porch, motionless, surveying the scene around him as the snow crunched under his boots and the darkness enveloped him. His heart pounded wildly, and he sensed that something decisive was about to occur. Finally, summoning his courage, he opened the door with a barely perceptible gesture. The wolves did not immediately surge inside. They seemed inhibited by the presence of a dog, standing like a faithful guardian nearby. The door swung open almost silently, as though this old house had always expected them. A soft creak of the wooden floor broke the tense silence as Ethan activated the kerosene lamp switch, filling the room with a gentle, golden glow. The wolves halted in the center of the room. Their breaths formed small clouds in the cool air. They observed him, not with fear or hunger, but with a mysterious intensity. Then Ethan noticed one injured wolf. Its right front paw was covered in dried, dark blood, and thin streaks marked its dense fur. The wound appeared fresh, as if it had been inflicted only moments before, and Ethan knew that such injuries often served as ominous signals. Slowly, Ethan sat on the floor to examine the wolf's wound more closely. With trembling fingers, he cleaned the injury using the first aid kit he always kept with him from his rescue days. The wolf twitched its ear slightly but remained calm. Its breathing quickened, yet it allowed Ethan to tend to it carefully. In that moment, Ethan also discovered a small torn piece of human clothing, a thin, red scarf that stood out against the gray snow. He gently picked it up, feeling its moisture from the melting snow between his fingers, and wondered, who could have left this here? Ethan then meticulously inspected the area in front of his house. The tracks indicated the presence of at least 3 individuals, some chaotic, others more human in appearance, though parts of them were blurred as if someone had just been there and then disappeared. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He was convinced that something was terribly wrong, that these people had not arrived by mere chance. As the night wore on, the forest around his house sank deeper into impenetrable darkness and silence, interrupted only by the occasional crunch of footsteps and sporadic murmurs. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan slowly made his way back inside, where he encountered Olivia Carter, a woman who had also sought shelter that night. Together, they cautiously entered the house. As they did, a soft, low growl emanated from behind a door. They opened it to reveal two wolves standing at the threshold, their eyes calm and almost human in their scrutiny. The wolves showed no aggression. Instead, their gaze was filled with an enigmatic awareness. One of them, with an injured paw, fixed its stare on Ethan. The blood was dark, dried, yet unmistakably fresh. Ethan understood that such wounds rarely occurred by accident and often carried a message. Slowly, Ethan approached and examined the wolf's injury with the meticulous care of a seasoned rescue worker. With trembling hands, he cleaned the wound using his portable first aid supplies, while the wolf shifted slightly but did not flee. His eyes fell once more on the red scarf, a vivid contrast against the snowy backdrop. His mind raced with questions. Who left this behind? Over the following days, Ethan's harrowing account of the mysterious wolves, coupled with Olivia's revelations about a shadowy group operating in the forest, and the baffling tracks they left behind, spread throughout the community of his small northern town. The locals whispered of how the forest had suddenly become unpredictable, how the wild creatures seemed to act under the command of an unseen force. Ethan, undeterred, tirelessly gathered evidence, taking detailed notes and speaking with residents who had witnessed something unusual. With Olivia's assistance and the community's support, he gradually uncovered the unsettling truth. A secretive group was behind a series of brutal attacks and crimes in the region, and the wolves were not merely wild animals. They were being used as instruments to protect the nefarious interests of this group. The revelation sparked outrage among the townspeople, who began demanding justice. Ethan and Olivia soon became symbols of resistance against the encroaching darkness, and their story, a tale filled with danger, mystery, and relentless struggle, grew into a legend among the inhabitants of the small town. To them, the forest was no longer merely a realm of untamed nature, but a battleground where truth and justice would ultimately prevail over fear and shadow. Thanks to the unwavering determination of Ethan and Olivia, along with the support of the local community, the nefarious group was eventually exposed, and the case was handed over to the proper authorities. The residents slowly regained their peace of mind, even though the memory of that fateful night remained etched in their hearts. This is the story of Ethan, Olivia, and above all of Emily, a brave young woman who stood as a pillar of strength, and their loyal dog, Max. It reminds us that even in the face of the deepest traumas and darkest shadows, courage, determination, and the power of community can overcome the gravest adversities. This narrative, painful as it may be, stands as evidence that true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to confront it head-on, even when the world is shrouded in ice and silence. As Ethan and Olivia continued their investigation in the dense, ominous forest, every crunch of snow beneath their feet and every subtle rustle became a part of an ominous puzzle that demanded solving. Olivia confided that she had long been tracking the movements of a mysterious group that had begun appearing in the area. A group that not only preyed on wild animals, but also targeted humans. She recounted a recent incident in which one of her acquaintances was attacked by these unseen predators, leaving deep psychological scars. Ethan felt a chill as he realized this was only the beginning, and that his once peaceful home had now become a stage for peril. Over the subsequent days, the tension in town grew as people whispered about the strange happenings in the forest. Residents began to view the woods with both fear and reverence, and reports of unexplained occurrences increased steadily. Ethan, though personally haunted by his experiences, remained resolute. He continued to document every detail, speak with those who had witnessed odd events, and gather every piece of evidence, no matter how small. Eventually, his relentless efforts, together with Olivia's determined support, led to a breakthrough. They discovered that the shadowy group was responsible for a series of brutal assaults and crimes in the region, and that the wolves were not merely feral animals, but were being employed as guardians of their sinister operations. This revelation ignited a wave of public outcry, and the townspeople demanded justice, while the authorities launched a full-scale investigation. In the following days, Ethan, Olivia, and the community emerged as beacons of defiance against the forces of darkness. Their saga, rife with danger, mystery, and ceaseless struggle, became the stuff of local legend. The forest, once a symbol of serene wildness, transformed into an arena where truth and justice would ultimately triumph over fear and oppression. Ultimately, through the steadfast commitment of Ethan and Olivia and the solidarity of the local community, the clandestine group was exposed and the case was taken over by law enforcement. The residents gradually regained a sense of normalcy, even though the memory of that fateful night remained indelibly imprinted in their hearts. This is the story of Ethan, Olivia, and most of all, of Emily, along with their loyal dog Max. It serves as a reminder that even when faced with the darkest traumas and the deepest shadows, the courage to confront fear, combined with the strength of community, can overcome the worst of adversities. True bravery is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to face it and to fight for justice, even when the world around you is frozen in silence. And so, as Ethan and Olivia ventured deeper into the forest, meticulously piecing together every clue, from erratic footprints in the snow to remnants of torn clothing and inexplicable marks on the trees, they uncovered evidence that pointed to a ruthless, organized group operating under the cover of darkness. Their investigation revealed that the wolves, far from being random visitors, were being used as sentinels by this group to protect their malevolent activities. Their findings sent shockwaves through the small town, uniting the residents in a demand for accountability and change. In the days that followed, the heroic efforts of Ethan, Olivia, and the determined townspeople led to the exposure of the criminal group, and the case was finally handed over to the proper authorities. Though the ordeal had left an indelible mark on the community, a sense of hope began to return. The story of Ethan, Olivia, and especially of Emily, and their steadfast companion Max, remains a testament to the indomitable spirit of courage and unity. It proves that even amid the most harrowing of circumstances, when fear and silence seem to reign, the strength of the human spirit and the bonds of community can illuminate the darkest nights and ultimately bring justice to those who have suffered.